Lifestyle Pirates with Big J and Adriano.
Okay, good morning. Welcome to this week's Lifestyle Pirates with me, Big J, and him, Adriano.
All right.
This week we are joined by Mark Hawwa, who is the director of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. Good morning, Squire. How are you?
Good morning, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.
Got to ride in this morning. It's a beautiful sunny day.
It's a beautiful day. And what did you ride in on? Because all I'm going to say was a lovely red motorbike, but what actually is it?
It's a Triumph Thruxton RS, and that red is a Mazda MX-5 red. I've always loved the way that they've just punched that colour through. It's got like a gold sort of underlying pearl or something.
Yeah, it's a triple layer pearl, that colour.
Yeah, so I copied it.
Nice.
It's a Mazda Thruxton. Don't tell Triumph I said that.
Mate, can we just get you talking to the microphone just a little
Yeah.
bit more? Otherwise he'll have a nightmare when he's editing this.
Done.
So, mate, we went a few weeks ago at the Sydney Concours d'Elegance. How'd you like? Thank you, thank you. And I know you were flying the flag of the Gentleman's Ride, which we're going to talk to. But you had your Cosmo there, didn't you, as well?
Yeah.
That was sort of the most unique car I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think it was the only Japanese car that's probably been at that show in its 3-year history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a beautiful car and it got a lot of praise, and it was fun to show something a little bit different as well.
Yeah. So tell me about that, please. I need to know, how'd you get it? Did you restore it? Did you buy it like that?
No, it was bought like that. It was it's been the dream car for a while, probably since I was about 18 or 19. As a younger guy, I always loved Mazda rotaries, and that being the first ever rotary, I guess, built by Mazda. Once it was licensed by Dr. Felix Wankel, it was always a special one, and I found one in Japan a few years ago, and it was quite funny because there's this guy I know that runs a business called Just Jap. And they do imports, yeah. And Steve, I gave him a call, and he picks up the phone. I'm like, hey, I've got this car that I'd love to get checked out in Japan. Do you know anyone there? And he's like, yeah, I'm in Japan at the moment. And I was like, this is perfect. Yeah. So he jumped on the bullet train and checked it out, and we sort of went ahead with it. And we got it at a good price because it wouldn't start up. Yeah. And then once it went through and once it went through the quarantine process here in Sydney, we literally push started it in reverse, and it just fired up straight away. So it was just the starter, and I was just like, oh, this is a win. But for me, it is one of the most beautiful cars ever designed. I mean, it's definitely got the sort of Italian feeling front end with an American Thunderbird rear end. And I mean, the fact that they called it a Cosmo was because it was when Russia was sending cosmonauts into space. So they've built this car that looks like a spaceship, ideally just to be able to show off this rotary technology, which isn't that good, but it's fun in its own right.
Yeah. So does it come fitted? Is it 10A?
It's a 10A, yeah.
Nice. What carbs do they run? Solids?
It's got this standard setup at the moment, which, to be honest, I'm not even sure what it is.
How does it drive?
It drives beautifully. Yeah. It does drive like an absolute dream. Once we got it into the country, it cleared quarantine, did a quick check, changed the spark plugs, changed the oils, and I actually took it down through the Royal National Park, Macquarie Pass, all the way through to Barrel and back, and it did not skip a beat. And touch wood, it hasn't skipped a beat since. And it has been restored at some point, and I dare say that point was anywhere between 3 to 5 years ago. Yeah, I've had it for a year and a half. Yeah, it just drives beautifully. Yeah, everything underneath the undercarriage is absolutely gorgeous. I can't really fault it. There's a couple little rust spots, but I'm a driver. Yeah. It's not there to look pretty.
So is that your third Mazda then? You got the Mazda Thruxton.
Smooth.
You got the Cosmo, and you got a bongo?
I've got a bongo van, a 1970s bongo van, and it's
for anyone who doesn't know what a bongo is, tell us about it, please.
It's a van. It's a 1 litre van. It's quite. It looks like a fat version of the Cosmo. It looks like a chubby version of the Cosmo.
Kind of look like a Cosmo.
It has a max speed of about 80 kilometres an hour with me in it.
You have to start that by reversing it, by push starting reversing as well.
You just need to find a really big hill. No, it's a fun van. It's a quirky van. I think a lot of my collection of cars are quite quirky. I've actually got 6 Mazdas. There's a whole heap of Mazdas in there. The bongo definitely is probably the quirkiest. Yeah. And it's bar in it? It's got a mini bar in it, yeah. The person that I bought it off had literally, I bought 2 Mazdas off him, and he was in Tarago. Yeah. And it had a mini bar in it, and we tried to drive both cars back to Sydney. And Taraga's just past sort of Goulburn,
Yeah.
a bit more towards the ocean, I guess. And the Mazda 1800 made it 1 kilometre from his house and then broke down. And he had already left his house and there's no mobile phone reception down there. So we were just like, oh, we're stuck here. And then some guy that we broke down in front of happens to come home and his house is a kilometre away from the driveway. And he goes, oh, yeah, race MX-5s. Yeah. You can park it here, and starts talking to us about his illegal mobile phone booster. And we're using his mobile phone to get in contact with the guy. Anyway, we leave it there for him to pick up and we just decide we'll tow that later. And my mate jumps in with me and we did the Mazda Bongo from, Tarago, Goulburn, all the way to Sydney at 80 kilometres an hour on the highway, being overtaken by every single truck and never being so scared in my life. Yeah. But no, it made it here, and it's a quirky, fun van. And there's a Mazda RX-7 as well. There's a Mazda 1500. There's a Mazda R130. Yeah.
Nice. What RX-7?
Series 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, 13B mild port turbo. Yeah. Every young ethnic looking man like me needs a Mazda RX-7.
Why? Totally agree.
Why Mazda? I guess where does that love of cars kind of come from?
Oh, I've got no idea. Actually, I lie. The first ever Mazda that I bought, I always lived in Cogra. That's where my parents raised us. And I was on Princess Highway and I was at a petrol station next to St. George's Leagues Club. And a guy pulls up in a Mazda RX-7 and he was an older guy. And I've looked at him, I've gone, wow, I really love this car. Is it for sale? And he goes, yeah, 500. I've gone, yeah, 500, I'll give it to you now. He goes, no, 5,000. I'm like, okay, I'm in. Yeah. And I got his address and I went past his house and I knew nothing about rotaries back then. And I went into the backyard and I was a bit cheeky. I brought $4,500 in cash. And him and his wife were sitting outside and I put the money down. I've gone, there's 4,500 and that's all I can afford. And he looks at me and he just had that look on his face like, you smart ass. And he's looked at me and he's gone, as long as you help me install the antenna. So I was stuck there for 2 hours helping him install an antenna. And then I bought the RX-7 and then I fell in love with the rotary side of things. I really fell in love with that style of engine and I guess how easy it was to build power, and essentially got to the point where we took the standard engine and bridge ported it, brought it up to about 200 horsepower, changed it from an automatic to a manual 5-speed gearbox from a Series 5, and it was just a fun car. Yeah. Had the number plates lawnmower. I used to get pulled over by police and they'd be like, it smells and sounds like a lawnmower.
It's a great story.
Brilliant. Now we're gonna do a step change now. We're gonna talk about motorbikes. So I've got to say congratulations, because I think this year is your 10-year anniversary of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, which is quite incredible. I mean, have you had a pinch yourself moment yet? Have you gone, Jesus, this is nuts?
I think over the last 10 years, there's been a substantial amount of pinch myself moments. Yeah. I think starting the event 2011 or 12, I'd only been riding motorbikes for a year. So I only got my motorbike license when I was 25 and I'm 36 now. So 11 years of riding and 10 events of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. And from day one, I did have that confidence, and I've always had that, I'd like to say, healthy amount of ego, where I felt that it was going to be a huge global success. And, we had it in 64 cities across, I think it was about 15 countries in the first year, 2,500 riders. And it continued to grow, and the people that we continued to meet, and I guess everything from some of these fantastic owners of motorcycle brands to I guess celebrities and people that are well known in the motorcycle custom building industry. They were all supportive of the event, and together they all helped it grow as well. And fast forward to 10 years, I think we're sort of getting that little bit closer. I think we're about it's $2 million off. $2 million off, raising $30 million.
Wow,
which is insane.
It's an amazing achievement.
November are very happy.
Yeah, and so go back to day one. Where does the idea come from? Where did that?
So,
because you founded it here in Sydney, didn't you?
Yeah, it started in Sydney. It was when I first started getting into motorcycles. I sort of have to take the story back a little bit. I went to Japan for 4 weeks, and I fell in love with the Japanese culture of customizing classic motorcycles. And every Yamaha SR400 that I saw was individually customized. And I loved the fact that it was an extension of their personality, I guess, right? They're quirky, they're a little bit different, how they do things. And I'm like, well, this really resonates with me. And I ended up buying one in Sydney and doing the same thing and modifying it. And I'm riding around for 4 weeks and I'm like, wow, this is boring. I've got no mates that ride motorbikes. So I started up a group called Sydney Cafe Races, which was just about getting people that have got that style of motorcycle together. That quickly grew into Perth, Melbourne, Brisbane, Newcastle, Canberra. And I said Perth already. And we started to get a bit of a global following based on having these, I guess, groups that were just about bringing the community together.
And then how did you promote this? Was this social media?
It was all social media.
Flyering? Was it?
Initially, you know what, to be fair, initially at the start it was, we had these little business cards that basically said, "Your bike rocks, join us."
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
And if we ever walked or rode or drove past a bike that fit that style of group, we would drop it on, or, cards would be getting handed out the window to the person and all the rest of it.
I remember doing that to a woman once.
How'd that go down?
Well, not very well, but I left my number on her windscreen because I thought she was pretty good looking back in the day. Yeah, nothing happened. Anyway, we digress.
I'm still waiting for that phone call.
It must have flown off. It must have flown off. It's a windy day.
Yeah, 100%. You're on some list now, for sure.
Yeah. And
so you're handing out cards saying your bike rocks.
Yeah, pretty much. And it continued to grow, and it was all about getting out there and riding your motorcycle. So the first ever ride that we did in Sydney was 30 riders, and we went down to Wollongong through the Royal National Park and back. And then there was merchandise, and everything we sold basically just went into a booze fund, and at the end of the year we'd just all pub crawl in the city and would get to probably about 4 or 5 pubs before we ran out of money, and that was fun. It was just a little bit of fun, and the groups got gifted to the admin, so it was never about making money. It was just about bringing community together. In the Perth group, one of the guys posted a picture up of Don Draper from the TV show Mad Men.
Quality.
And it was him in a suit on a classic, I think it was a Matchless, and I've looked at the photo going, ooh, what a great way to break stereotypes globally. And then one of the guys goes, hey, how about we do a suit ride? And I've gone, let me just one up that idea for a bit. Give me a few weeks. And then, it was logo design, coming up with the name and figuring out how to take it global in the first year. And I put it out there in social media world. And I guess that's, as much as I hate Facebook, it's why I also love Facebook. 64 mates of mine around the world turned around and said, yep, we're in. And so first year, 64, 2,500 riders, and, a really solid base to be able to build something off. And in the second year, one of the guys that rides motorbikes with us goes, Mark, we've got this really big problem. I work for the Prostate Cancer Foundation, and we're finding it really hard to motivate guys over 40 to get checked. And we think that by hitting the motorcycle market, which, stereotypically is quite a macho market, we think it's a great way to break down that sort of that stereotype as well. And I've just looked at it and gone, mate, that is perfect. Let's do it. And it worked, right? Because we got people speaking about these different issues. And I even remember a couple of years ago, one of our Thursday night ride meetups was at Harry's at Tempe, and there's these 2 guys talking about the fact that they've both had their testicles removed because they had cancer. And I'm sitting there going, 8 years ago when we started this, there is no way you'd hear 2 dudes that don't even know each other speaking about testicular cancer.
Yeah.
So it did sort of start to bring people back down a little bit. People felt a little bit more open. And, we're at a point now where we probably get about 100 pieces of feedback a year from guys saying if it wasn't for you, would be dead, and then sharing their story. And that's where you pinch yourself and go, you know what? This is way more important than me, any of the guys in the office, and way more important than any of these specific riders. It's really all about people coming together doing something.
That's mega.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I'm not a biker. I've never had a motorbike. I've been on the back of one years ago and went round a roundabout and wasn't comfortable. And I remember leaning up rather than leaning with the corner and got an absolute bollocking. But the feeling I get, obviously, through people owning a bike and going out on an open road and putting the throttle down, that's great. But that's just what you've just described is just the absolute bonus of what you're trying to do, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's quirky, right? It's so different in the fact that it is classic bikes, it is classic styled outfits. I mean, all these guys and girls, they're dressing up in suits, the ladies in dresses, or a mix and match. It doesn't really matter anymore. But they're all on theme, and it's a beautiful sight. Like, the idea was, let's go for a ride through the heart of the city. So can you imagine Sydney, first year, and we're going down George Street, and you had all this stuff that was happening at the airport with some of the motorbike gangs, and there was a lot of bad press. And then here we come going for a ride, and you can just tell that everyone here is hearing the roar of these motorbikes, these classic motorbikes, and they're scared shitless.
Right,
and then
okay,
they turn around and see these guys waving like they're the royals and these ladies waving and everyone saying,
In a nice
top
tweed.
of the morning.
Yeah,
and
nice tweed.
Yeah, and they're stopping to let them cross the road and all the rest of it. And I remember getting down to the rocks, and this was obviously George Street when you could drive through it. And there was a lady that literally climbed on top of her car with her iPad, and she was filming the whole thing. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is pretty cool, right? And, for us, it was a mix of, we want to sort of, it is like a ticket tech parade where you want to sort of show people the actual event. You want them talking, you want them learning about why we're doing this specifically. Yeah. But at the same time, we're dressed in suits, so you want to keep the speed down as well. It's not about going for a burn through the national park at speed. It's about really bringing it back down to, showcasing people that, hey, this person riding a motorbike behind that visor, it's a human, because that gets lost sometimes when you're sort of, when people are driving their cars and they're just thinking, oh yeah, it's got a motorcycle, he's a little bit reckless. They sort of tend to forget that they don't know who's behind that visor. And that could be your dad, it could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be your mum. And so it's really important that we sort of showcase the positive side of motorcycling.
Yeah, so you're trying to break that stereotype as well then.
Yeah, 100%.
And also these, because I was looking at the social media, these aren't, these are works of art, some of these bikes. I mean, I was looking at your style guide. Now I got excited and I thought I'm going to see like where you can buy your jackets and your pocket squares and all that kind of stuff. A very different style guide on your website to what I'm used to. What is, because there's things like Cafe Racer and a Bobber. Talk us through the style guide of motorbikes, because I didn't realize there were so many.
Oh, there is heaps. And I mean, and that style guide specifically is for our event, right?
Yeah.
It's really focusing on the more classic styled motorcycles, but you've got sidecars, you've got scramblers, you've got trackers, you've got choppers. It's really, for us, the event's really about focusing on those styles that existed pre-70s. For instance, a Cafe Racer, really born in the 50s and 60s, was all about stripping down weight off your motorcycle. And back then it was about trying to hit the ton, which is 100 mile an hour. And at Ace Cafe in the UK, what would happen was there was a junction and you had a jukebox, and the music tracks went for about 2 minutes back then. So when the track came on, you would jump on your motorcycle, you'd try to hit that junction, come back. And to be able to do that, you had to hit 100 mile an hour. So that was the little challenge, and it was super reckless. And it was all about stripping the motorbikes back, making them handle better. And, that's what I loved about this scene. It wasn't, there are some modern classics that you can buy off the shelf, but really it was about, getting your tools out and having a little bit of fun and learning about a motorcycle. And, we do get a bit of slack from people that sort of sit there and go, well, wait a second, why can't I join on my modern sports bike or my street fighter? And the fact of the matter is the event is big enough as it is. It's having that level of exclusivity and showcasing that it's a classic styled ride with the outfits just works so well visually. But also we're limited in how many people we can even have attend these events. We're limited in Australia, well in Sydney, to 800 riders. In the US we're limited, like all around the world we're limited. And it's one of those things that if you open it up to absolutely everyone, you can't control it. So I would much rather raise $6 million a year, knowing that we could have raised 8, 9, 10, 12, but having the longevity of knowing that this event's going to last for another 10, 20, 30 years, and that we're going to be able to continue reminding people to get checked through that process. And I sort of think that's where a lot of motorcyclists tend to forget that, hey, it's about the cause, it's not about you specifically. Yeah. And we do get a lot of frustrated riders who want to take part, but they forget that they still can volunteer their time. They still can help out. They still can essentially donate to Movember and reach the same outcomes.
So how do you manage that community? Because this is a global community. I mean, you 340,000 riders. I mean, you've got mates all over the world, but what are they? Are they country managers? Like, how do you manage this? And I guess keep checking in as well, because this isn't just about the rides. I can imagine you've built some good relationships.
It's a huge network, and it's, the biggest year that we had was the year just before COVID, which was 120,000 riders. But yes, we've had about 360,000 riders over the sort of 10-year period. It is difficult, but we've been able to build out systems that really make it a hell of a lot easier. So we've got one ride host in every single city. So they're the people that we communicate. They're all based on tiers, right? Your tier 1 is essentially your rides that are your main cities that get the majority of people, that raise the majority of funds. Tier 2, high fundraisers. Tier 3, new rides or rides that are just in smaller country towns. So we really have to limit our interactions with those tier 2s and tier 3s only because we're a team of 5 people, 4 in Australia and one shared resource between Movember and Distinguished Gentleman's Ride in LA. But by building out the systems online, we've got a portal, sort of tutorial that they go through, and it really sets the expectations of how to manage one of these events and how to do it safely. And it's about a 45-minute sort of tutorial, and they sign off on it, and that ultimately gives them the insurance coverage that they need, that they're not liable if something goes wrong, but they've got to follow the rules. So it's this whole system that's been built out over 10 years, where we've had to adjust, do our risk assessments, change certain things to make sure that the ride hosts are protected, especially in a litigious environment like the United States, but globally as well.
And how about some of the characters in the community? Are there any quirky cats? You mentioned everyone's a human, which I do like. There must be some quirky people.
Yeah, everyone's a human apart from the dogs in the sidecars. No, there's definitely some quirky people, and you get to see some pretty quirky motorcycles as well. One of the guys that takes part in New York, he's I don't actually know his real name, and he's definitely not the singer, but it's his name is Meatloaf on social media, and he's got this amazingly quirky, big sort of aqua tealish sort of coloured Harley Davidson, and he's so supportive. And this guy, he actually sends cards to us to say thank you for putting on the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride again. And he's this big unit of a guy, and he's the softest soul that we've met across the journey. But you've also got people that sort of are even the actual ride hosts themselves, that go on to do their own events. And that's a pretty cool thing that I sort of, I guess, want to bring up, is because we've been able to teach these guys how to run safe events through the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. Some of them, one of the guys takes over all of Monza racetrack and puts on a whole motorcycle show there, and they race their cafe races down the straight of Monza before the angled sort of corners, and it's pretty fantastic. But yeah, I think it's, motorcycles are quirky, and a lot of the people in the scene are quirky, and it sort of just makes it all that little bit more exciting.
So you've started off in marketing, didn't you?
I started off, I guess it was DJing Woolworths. I was a checkout chick, which, by the way, I think that every single child should work as a checkout chick at Woolworths because of how they are able to interact with different people. Yeah. But then it was hospitality, it was music business, managing bands, and then it was I was a sales executive for TUIs. Yeah. So I looked after the CBD, actually, which was a pretty loose job at the age of 22. Yeah. I bet. And then I went into the opposite side. I started managing pubs, nightclubs, and then I went into the cafe game. Mm-hmm. Wanted to learn how to sort of, I guess, operate a coffee shop and learn how to make coffee. And yeah, at that same time, that's when sort of the idea of DGR was taking off. And I sort of thought, okay, I'll put a few more 3 years into this, and then I'll give it to the charity, and I'll just go back into full-time work. And I was I was living with mum and dad. And then when we got that first message from a guy in the UK saying, hey, if it wasn't for you, I'd be dead, and he shared his story, I was like, oh, this feels like I'm now sort of being emotionally blackmailed to continue running this event. Yeah. So I went for another 3 years unpaid before I finally got to sort of, I guess, get a paycheck by doing what we enjoy doing, which is running the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride.
Yeah. So that message that you got really sort of realised, you had that realisation where you wanted to sort of go down that path and run DGR?
I knew it was more important than me. Yeah. I had a heads of agreement with a venue in Newtown because I wanted to set up an old school diner for the car guys and the motorcycle guys. And I sort of lost that heads of agreement and a little bit of money. But at the same time, DGR was growing rapidly. I mean, we were in year 3, and I think we're in 145 cities, 60 countries or something along those lines. And it just kept on amplifying. And then it got to the point where we needed to take on additional resources. Initially, we partnered up with the Prostate Cancer Foundation Australia. I didn't feel right about the funds that were being raised in the States and in the UK and in New Zealand going to an Australian-based charity, even though we made sure that all the research they did was applicable globally and not exclusive. So we partnered up with, the US, Canada, New Zealand, UK, Australia. Yeah. And then managing 5 charity relationships on top of everything else that was taking place was it was a lot of work. So the goal was to get Movember on board. I'd been a Mo bro, as we're called, since the second year of Movember.
Yeah.
Back when I was taking trains and people wouldn't sit next to me because I had the trucker moustache. Whereas now they just look at you and go, Movember.
You must be a barista or a brewer. Or where's your coffee shop? Yeah.
I stopped wearing flannelette. No, and I can't even remember where I was going with this. I know. So and then we ended up partnering with Movember about 5 years ago, and that just made the relationship, substantially easier. Being able to have one sort of contact that we can utilize to run that manages itself. It's pretty cool.
And how does that conversation go? I mean, do you approach them? Had they heard of you guys? How did that?
They'd definitely heard of us. I think it was it wasn't good initially because I sort of got in contact with them early on, where they had a previous CEO that there's a bit more ego involved, I guess, and he basically turned around and said, why would we want to support another charity? And, I sat there and said, well, actually, I think you're in the position where you should be looking at up and coming events and figuring out how to bring them under your network and continuing to grow sort of the fundraising for Movember and all the research that you guys do. Anyway, that email ended up nowhere. And then I think it was when one of their founders was sort of getting back on into the scene that he saw the email and contacted me and said, actually, you're completely right. Let's have that conversation. And that was probably about a six month conversation. It's a lot harder than just, I guess it's different for me because I sit there and look at what we do and go, well, we're working our backsides off to raise all these funds.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you want to do it?
But we don't just want to give it to the charity. We want them to be accountable for it. We want to direct where the money goes within their organization, and we don't want them to take an administration fund. Because as you can imagine, there is work involved in even accepting funds at that level. So our contracts with them are basically every dollar that they receive from us basically goes into a program. It doesn't cover off any of the administration funds, but we have to sign off every single cent that's spent within their organisation from what we've raised. And the great thing about that is we get to choose the projects, and we get to choose projects that connect with our audience. And we were even able to do I guess it's more of a grant, I'd say, where we got to fund 22 different projects that were about mental health in motorcycling, which, I think we committed 1.15 million Australian dollars to that, to figuring out what those programs look like. And some of them are still being funded till this day. And
can you report back to your community on what the money that they're raising is going towards
100%.
And successes and that kind of stuff?
For us, it's about being as transparent as we possibly can. So on our website, we've got a list of every single program we've ever funded. And then when we get those little wins, we make sure that we're sort of communicating them to our audience as well. I mean, for us, it's a long-term journey. The great thing about these motorcyclists is our retention's quite strong. It's sort of very different with, I guess, motorcycles versus your people driving daily cars, right? It's an exclusive event. People that love this style stay with that style for pretty much probably their whole life. They just end up acquiring more motorcycles that are slightly different. So we get to hold on to them, and taking them through that entire journey is all part of it. I mean, we've got one guy that messaged me yesterday on Instagram saying, I've been doing DGR for 9 years and my father's got prostate cancer. And although I can't see him and we've been apart for a year because of COVID, I feel like I've helped out as much as I can, even though I'm stuck at home, by being a part of DGR and fundraising for the last 9 years. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. So actually, you raised a good point. So what happened last year with COVID, with the events?
We had to get creative. And, back to what you were saying about marketing, I never sort of had formal training in marketing, but it sort of, to me, as egotistical as it sounds, it sort of, to me, it always came as common sense. What would I do? What would I be interested in? And stepping out of your own shoes and going, okay, how would you win myself over? Yeah. And I'm really good at sort of compartmentalizing different parts of my personality, my multiple personalities. But with last year, we sat there and we thought, okay, well, we're now coming to a period where things are a lot darker than they have been in the past. People are in a worse way than they have been in the past, and the mental health side of things is truly being affected on a global scale. So it was important that we didn't cancel the event like everyone else did. I mean, this is a feel-good event where people feel like they're helping people out, and even riding a motorcycle, it's so fantastic for your mental health. Great way to clear the head, great way to get some fresh air and sort of, be able to focus on something other than the problems that you've got at the moment, right? It's a great escape, I guess. So we decided to ride solo. So we built out a whole, I guess, different setup to the event where it was all about people riding individually but connecting globally. And by doing that, we ultimately knew that obviously it was going to be a smaller event. We know that money's a little bit tighter, but still it was so important for us to keep the brand strong and continue raising money for Movember. And we still ended up raising US $2.7 million, which is half of what we do normally, but still a huge amount of money when you're looking at the middle of a pandemic. And we're being tested again this year because the dates ultimately changed. We made some big decisions with COVID and changed the date to May this year. And a big part of that was we've had it so good in the Southern Hemisphere for the last 10 years. It's time that we sort of give the Northern Hemisphere the opportunity to ride at the start of their riding season, not when it's freezing cold or even snowing, which has happened in the past. Long-term picture, I mean, we know this year it's probably going to bite us on the backside a little bit because we're running 2 events within that sort of 7-month period. But this year is a bit of a weird one. We've got 3 different styles of event. We've got ride solo if you're in lockdown. We've got a COVID-safe group ride, which is your typical ride with obviously some COVID safety measures. And the third ride is a ride-only route. It's a loop route. So let's say, for instance, Sydney were to get locked down tomorrow and the event's the next day afterwards, we can set a route that goes through the city. It's all looped, so there's no start, there's no end point, there's no congregation of people, and you've got a 4-hour window to do it. So you'll still be able to interact with people as you're riding, and people will be doing it the opposite way. So you get the tally-o as you're sort of riding past them. So it's really up to the actual ride hosts, and we'll sign off on it depending on what their local situation is as to what style of ride they do. But we're 2 weeks into our 8-week campaign now. On Sunday, it will be 6 weeks to go, and we're 40% up in donations and 30% up in registrations. And a big part of that is the UK. So, all we can do really is build the event, make sure it's as safe as possible, put it out to the world, and then you essentially cross your fingers and just hope that it works.
Yeah. What's a COVID-safe bike ride?
So essentially, it would be if we have to do group rides, it's making sure that you've got your QR codes. It's making sure that you've got your hand sanitizers. If masks are required, making sure that we've got masks on site to give people, and then making sure that everyone's socially distanced. Like obviously here in Australia, probably not as important as in Italy, France at the moment.
Yeah.
The UK is coming out of sort of lockdown May 4th, I think it is. The US is sort of a mixture between all the different states. So essentially we don't have all the answers, but we've got the systems, and we've just put it out there and hoping that people do the right thing and choose the right style of ride for their city. Yeah.
So am I right in thinking it happens on the same day around the world?
Yes. So from day one, the event was always the last Sunday of September. Awesome. Now it's the 23rd of May, which I think next year is the 22nd or however it works. But it is about connecting locally, so at a Sydney-based level, and then also knowing that you're also riding at the same time as these guys in Brisbane and Perth, and then actually the whole world's riding. And so you've effectively built this huge network, which you can imagine how social media just ripples out, and the news outlets absolutely love it. And it just gets so much awareness because while you're doing it here, someone else is doing it there, and it's literally 120,000 people around the world on the same day riding these classic style motorcycles.
That's mega.
Pretty unique feeling. I've got an idea where we're talking to a watch brand at the moment, and one of the ideas I pitched to them, it's a bit of a selfish one, but it was using time to be able to take part in 2 events in the one day. So we do one ride in New Zealand, and then fly over to Hawaii and do the last ride, because obviously as the world clock goes, it's New Zealand starts and Hawaii always finishes. So there's the opportunity to do 2 rides in one day, I think. So we'll see how that goes next year.
So I was actually going to ask that. Cool. That's very cool. What brand are you talking to?
It starts with B.
Right, okay. Is that because you like the brand that starts with B?
Yeah, no. So what one of the staff members in the office starts with B. It's Brolex. And I thought that was actually pretty funny, Brolex. I was like, oh, man, we should make an Instagram page.
In Thailand, I think.
Yeah. No, we've been sponsored by Zenith Watches in the past, so we had a fantastic 3-year relationship with them. But ultimately, when it comes to sponsorship deals, sponsorship deals tend to fail when you've got a new CEO. They want to sort of do something a little bit different. They want to sort of put their sort of mark of authority on things. They don't tend to follow things that have worked in the past, unfortunately. Not some of the smarter CEOs anyway. Triumph we've had on board for 8 years. So Triumph has been the longest supporter we've had for a long time. We've had Elf Total on board for 3 years. We've had Bell Staff Clothing on board for 2 years. There's some really great brands out there that what I like about it is it's authentic and it's organic. We haven't sort of sat there and been, had a third party approach. It's always been, oh, we love what you do. Oh, we love what you do. Or it's been a conversation that we've done in person where we've just happened to meet the right people. And every single brand has just fit in really well. And, I think the key for us is understanding that, yes, there's some business outcomes, but we know that they're in it because they're super passionate about the event. They love the style of the event and they love the fact that it supports charity. And then there's the sneaky side part where ultimately they've got to sell motorbikes, jackets, watches, oil, and all the rest of it.
Of course, yeah. So tell us about Throttle Roll.
Ooh, Throttle Roll. That was a fun one. Okay.
I've seen the pictures and everything like that. How was I not a part of that?
Throttle Roll was some very loose partying. Throttle Roll was 2013 was when I first started it. The guy that was running the Vic, his name was Vic on the Park at Enmore. His name was Paddy. He goes, oh yeah, no, there was another guy, Luke. Sorry, he goes, oh, you should run a motorcycle event. You guys are right into custom motorcycles, and I sort of started to look into it. And I'm like, yeah, there's not really much happening for custom motorcycles in Sydney. Overseas has got all these fantastic events. And I thought, fuck it, let's do it. And so we threw one, and I remember talking to Paddy, and I said, I need $5,000. And he goes, what for, mate? Because that's what I'm going to make out of this. Because I knew that it was going to be no money involved in the first few years. And he goes, you know how many people like you come up to me and ask money saying that you're going to guarantee this many people and you're going to sell this much alcohol? And I've just looked at him and gone, okay, I've got a different deal for you. I've gone, at the end of the event, you're going to come up to me with an envelope with $5,000 or I'm not going to host the event here again. And I was so cocky, right? I was 27, 28. Anyway, at the end of the event, he came up to me with an envelope for $5,000 and locked in the next year. But it was just about showcasing the custom motorcycle culture in Australia, between the same style of motorcycles that takes part in the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, but intertwining it with live music, a little bit of art and all the rest of it. But the issue that we had with that venue is it continued to grow over the 3 years so big that we ended up having motorbikes parked down both sides of Addison Road, which is it's a pretty thorough it's a thoroughfare there. And police came up to me and the council came up to me and they've gone, Mark, this isn't happening at this venue again. However, we've got an idea for you. Let's catch up next week. And so we caught up with them the week after. And, I was scared. I was sitting there going, wait a second, we're going to get blocked. Like, we're not going to be able to run this event. And then they showed me one of the roads next to Sydenham train station, which was, I think it was called Railway Road or Railway Parade or something, Marrickville. And they literally gave me permission to close off the whole street and throw a full-blown street party. And we sort of built up the scaffolding, had 3 levels of scaffolding that had motorcycles on display, like you were at an art gallery looking at them. We had a massive stage at the end. It was a 6,000-person street party. We had massive Australian bands like Kingswood and Delta Rigs, food trucks, mechanical bulls, just for people to get thrown off.
You've always got to have one of them.
It's always just a little bit of quirky fun. And it was just it was a really fun time. A lot of the pretty much nearly every manufacturer of motorcycles jumped on board and supported that event. And then we did one again 2 years later. And then it just got to the point where, we're sitting there looking at the risk associated with it going, if it rains, we stand to possibly become bankrupt because of just how much it was costing to put these events on. And we found a fantastic warehouse. That would have been 2 years ago. And they were knocking it down. And there was a guy, Sam, a friend of ours, that was running it. And we ended up doing a warehouse party. That was 2019. And that was fun because it was like 6 different areas. You had the live music, you had the food hall, you had the art, you had the shopping, and then you had the motorbikes on display, and then you had parking as well for people. And that was probably about 4,000 people. And that was probably by far the most fun that I've ever had with Throttle Roll. And, then COVID hit and sort of COVID's sticking around this year. So I dare say we probably won't be doing another Throttle Roll until next year.
Yeah.
2022.
I can't wait. I want to go to that one for sure.
Do you need a trance DJ? Is that what you're angling for?
No, mate, no. Kind of, no. I can play trance country. Country trance?
Mate, it's all
You can make a new genre like trance rockabilly.
Job done. How do you spell that? No. So tell us about Mark fucking Hawwa, the YouTube page.
Oh, this is it's so weird. You're the first person that's ever brought that up in like a podcast or any sort of interview thing that I've ever had.
Because I really like the content.
You know what it is? It's so weird for me, right? I said that I've got these split personalities, right? And the idea behind this split personality is you've got the distinguished gentleman's ride and then you've got me. And we're not necessarily the same. And I think that's really confusing for a lot of people because they're like, oh, you know, this guy's wearing a singlet and board shorts. And like, you know, we thought that he would be dappered up to the nines. Like, yeah, I will be at the distinguished gentleman's ride and at a funeral and at a wedding and at any important meetings with watch companies that start with B. So I think for me, that was just a little bit of an outlet and I still feel super insecure about it because I'm like, oh, if the sponsors are looking at that side of things and trying to associate me directly with my events, it's a little bit, no, don't be, it's a little bit weird. I mean, I think for me, the MFH side of things is where I get to sort of have a bit more fun with the cars and the motorcycles that I enjoy. And I get to be, I guess, less formal, more myself, whereas obviously my personality is completely different to that of the distinguished gentleman's ride where, yes, I ride appropriately on the road, right time, right place, but I love taking those motorbikes, you know, onto the track and, you know, getting my knee down and having an absolute burn as well. So, yeah, no, it's a fun little project where I'm just sharing things in that sort of process and, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's going to come from it. It's just the opportunity.
I think it's fucking super cool.
I think it's just fun.
I watched a few episodes. Yeah, it's just about bike building and just bikes. Like, so I'm in, man. Yeah,
that was really cool because Royal Enfield sort of turned around and said, Mark, we want to do a project with you where, you know, you build a bike, but we want it to be a bolt-on build so that we can show people that they don't need to use the grinder, they don't need to weld to be able to have this beautiful custom bike, and there was a budget involved, and you know that sort of build's coming to an end now, and the episode should be out shortly. But it's been such a fun process in how to be creative while sort of being limited in what you can actually do as well. And so we looked at all these different bolt-on parts and we were able to sort of make, you know, a really beautiful bike for probably half the price that you would spend if you were to buy a more premium, you know, British bike and then do all the custom work. And it's just a good way to show the younger people that, you know, they can afford to be able to sort of work on a smaller budget and still have something beautiful.
Do you think you've organically become a motorcycle journalist? Mate, it sounds like you've been asked to go, you know, to Santa Cruz and
yeah. There's been a heap of trips overseas, and a lot of that is based off just the networking and relationships that we've built. So, one of our good mates is the owner of Royal Enfield Motorcycles, the actual whole company. And so, yeah, there's a good relationship there.
That's a mega contact.
Yeah, Harley Davidson, we've got great relationships there through people that we've sort of just been friends with for years. And so I wouldn't say journalists. I feel like that's super offensive to journalists because, you know, I'd be the cheeky journalist that would get someone to shadow write everything that I do. Video I'm comfortable with. Writing I'm okay with. But to be honest, those journalists, I mean, they've got the vocabulary. I can't even say the word vocabulary.
I'm a mechanic, mate. I'm on the same page, bro.
but it's been a huge. I mean, before COVID, I mean, we got sent over to the Sevilla region in Spain to ride some Harley Davidsons, the new Fat Bob, and some of the soft tails. Croatia. I rode some motorbikes in Croatia for Harley Davidson. Throughout the US. Yeah, it's been.
So you are one then.
Yeah, I'm a Furno, a fake journo.
Did you just coin that, or is that actually?
I just coined that. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Just for those that aren't checking out on YouTube, Mark is smiling from ear to ear at the moment.
So, what's your favorite sort of memory on a motorbike? Then, mate, it sounds like you've got so many.
There are heaps. Probably going through Angela's Crest in the US, 2015. I did the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride there, and we had some issues with, you know, you've got multiple personalities that you're dealing with all these ride hosts, and sometimes they don't all go to plan. And I'm always scared at DGR because I'm scared because there's essentially, in my mind, there's three things that would be the end of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, and one of them's death. One of them is not being able to get insurance, and the other one is a slow death by, you know, turning it into something that's just overwhelming, that congests traffic. So opening it up to every style of motorcycle, right? And number one scares me a lot. And so, there's times where DGR's coming up and, the DGR's that day, and I wake up and I go, oh, I'd love to just be able to sleep all day today and wake up tomorrow and learn that nothing's happened and that the event's safe for another year. And I don't do that, obviously, because I've got to attend these events. But part of me unwinding after the event is just jumping on a motorbike and going for a ride by myself. Yeah. I don't want to be with anyone. I just want to sit there and reflect at what we've done and all the hard work and just go, you know what, now I can sort of just chill out for a few weeks before we get stuck back into it. And riding through Angela's Crest, which in Los Angeles, wow, I was just blown away, and I nearly missed the plane because I just kept on going and then had to drop the bike off and all the rest of it. But I dare say just a solo ride after a big group ride like that, where I've just stuck with what I'm thinking about and and being able to just ride in foreign countries is always a little bit of fun.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. There is something magical about going for a ride where you can just clear your headache.
Yeah.
I don't know why it does it, but I suppose you're focusing on so many different things that are happening around you that you just block out everything else out.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I think a lot of it comes down to, as weird as this is going to sound, is you're closer to death than you had been before you jumped on the motorcycle, right? And so attention-wise, your senses are heightened. You're looking, you're anticipating. You've got to have your wits about yourself and faith in the fact that you can manage this motorcycle that you're on, and it puts you in this special place where, you are focused. You're not focusing on anything else. You're free by focusing on not dying. As weird as that sounds.
Yeah. I think I can imagine you've got to be no less than 100% present.
Oh, 100%.
Whereas if you're in a car, your phone goes, you're worrying about the radio, you're doing the air conditioning, you could probably argue that you're never really 100% present and aware of your surroundings. But I can imagine on a motorbike, there's no...
You don't have the airbags. You don't have the four walls of steel. Yeah.
But it's also not even you got to worry about. It's everybody else as well.
Well, and that's the issue, I guess. Like even riding to the office on a daily basis, there's probably 2 or 3 potential accidents that you've got to avoid where someone's on their mobile phone or they decide to indicate after they're already half in your lane. It's you've got to have your wits about yourself, and you've got to be one of those people that reacts fast, and you've got to be the sort of personality that isn't the victim of the world. It's I nearly had an accident. No, that's my fault. I'm not going to blame that person. I'm going to blame me for not giving myself that space, for not anticipating that was going to happen. It's a very unique frame of mind to ride a motorcycle safely, especially in a place like Sydney.
Yeah. How about you? What's your favourite experience on your bike? Because you've not been out for a while.
No. I haven't had the chance, really. In this country, probably... Putty. I love Putty Road.
Oh, what a road!
I love Putty Road. Just going up there and back. Like I've done 400 k's on a Panigale in one day. That's gruesome. But it just feels so good. It's amazing. And not only that, if you got a good bunch of blokes and you're not doing anything stupid and it's just a nice ride, it's an amazing experience, man. And then you stop, you sit down, you have a coffee or a pie or something like that, and you talk about the road, the ride that you just had, and it's like, oh yeah, did you say that was like, it's just a cool feeling.
The section after Grey Gum Cafe where it gets twisty, that is. We had this when I was working at that cafe. As I was starting Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, I met all these federal police officers because they were in the building sort of next door, and became really good mates with them. And they organised a ride, and I joined them on my SR 500, and they're all on their big sports bikes. Yeah. And we stopped at that Grey Gum Cafe, and we learnt that there was a fire ahead. And anyway, get into the Grey Gum Cafe, that's pretty cool, but you get there because you want to do the roads after.
Yeah, exactly.
So I looked at the guys and went, let's just push on, and if we need to turn back, we'll turn back. And we push on. We push on a little bit too far to the point where we're in smoke and there's a fire brigade and we're trying to figure out if he's telling us to go back or to go through. And we ended up just punching through, and literally we punched through a fire. Everything just went that warped sort of
that would have been
air,
so cool.
And the air was tight and we just pushed out of it, and we're just like, that was epic. And then we got to do the road, and obviously we couldn't go back, and it was on news that night that there was a fire and all the rest of it. I was just like, we couldn't tell if they were saying go or go back. And then as we were sort of going this way, the police officers saw us push out, and they're just shaking their head, and we're just like, yeah, that was really stupid.
Ghost Rider.
I think that was 2013, I think that was.
So are you a full face helmet, or are you?
It's
what's your
it's
style?
definitely a mix. Sort of probably more so the 3/4 helmet where it doesn't have a visor. It's got the chin protection. I really enjoy those because it's got the safety for the cheeks if you do come off. Open face on the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. One, again, it's a slower ride. The other part of it is I enjoy people being able to see my my ear-to-ear grin.
Yeah.
And I think it's important on that sort of specific ride that people see a face to a motorcyclist. Whereas I do always feel like there's a disconnect between drivers and motorcyclists when you've got a visor on and they can't see whether or not you're happy or, I can be sitting at a light and have the biggest smile on my face and they sort of will drive past or someone will walk past and think that I'm aggro or a hoon or angry. And it's like, no, man, I've got the biggest smile on the face ever.
That's a really good point. I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's so it just depends. And then obviously on a racetrack, it's clearly a full face helmet.
So why do people think bikers are angry people? Do you think the media has something to do with that?
I think it's media, but I think it's just previous experiences as well. I mean, look into the past, and it was always motorcycling was more of a outlawish sort of thing for the majority of people, and media do sort of love to play on stories of bikies and all the rest of it, and so do government. I mean, stripping people back from what they can wear and what they can't wear and all the rest of it. So, I mean, it's not a topic that I'll go deeply into because it's not a safe topic to go deeply into. But yeah, definitely, I think it's just people's general experiences. I mean, I remember as a kid seeing a motorcyclist get off his motorcycle and start, yelling at a car user for whatever reason, and the car user just drove and hit him, and the guy just went flying over the bonnet. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, going, at what point did this guy that was riding a motorbike think that, he was competition for a car? Like, we're the most vulnerable people out there. But I think sometimes we think we're the toughest guys out there, whereas, we're not. No. We're not. Us up against a car isn't going to end well, full stop. And, we used to have a friend of ours that would essentially sort of staunch up to people and all the rest of it. Like, mate, pull your head in. Yeah, that's not the right.
This country is really
it's
bizarre.
Ridiculous. I can't understand why people get that worked up. For me, like this is how my head works, right? You could nearly hit me, right, by just being an absolute idiot. But the moment that you put your hand up, we're cool.
Yeah. It's like you acknowledge that.
Yeah, and even then you could nearly hit me and not put your hand up. But as long as you're in front of me and I'm behind you and I'm safe, I am now focusing on what else you're going to do, not focusing on how angry I am that I want to get back at you. And that's the problem, especially road rage is bad, but road rage with motorcyclists is just stupid. And you see these videos where people upload their videos riding motorcycles and, they try and catch up to the person and swear at them. It's just like, nah, man, for me, I'm already focusing on what's next because something else is going to pop out and wipe you if you're focusing on how to get back at this person.
For a car to just
100%.
I think it's the fight or flight thing, isn't it? Though I think that's just where you see the red mist come in, and you just, I don't think people are fully aware of what they're doing. They're just they want to, I think, make a point and say almost, hey, look, here's me. I'm in a bike. You're in a car.
Yeah.
Just raise awareness. Like, and I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I think it's just that red mist comes in. They want to make sure that the person is aware of what they've done.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people are, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier on, where people I don't think are present in cars nowadays.
No, they're definitely not. Like the amount of times that, I drive home and I'm like, fuck, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah. or when you're
on my own life.
even yesterday when I was driving, there was literally I was taking a ride onto Princess Highway and there was a light to go left. And people are beeping the horn, right? And all these beepings emerging. And I'm sort of looking to my right going, what's going on here? And there's this person literally on their phone in their car. And they couldn't hear the beeping because the guy had headphones on as well. So this guy looking at his phone with headphones had no idea that he'd just literally missed a green light and everyone had to sort of sit there for another 5 or 6 minutes. Like it's pretty selfish as well, in my opinion.
How not present are you? Like there's so much that can be going on around you and you're just not there.
I personally think that the roads would be a safer place and the world would be a safer place if everyone was forced to do their motorcycle license and ride a motorcycle for a couple of weeks on Sydney roads.
I've heard that from so many different people.
I think you start to respect a little bit more. But at the same time, it's also on motorcyclists to do the right thing as well. I mean, I've been in my car before, and I shouldn't admit this, but checked a sneaky text message while I'm riding, and the person that's illegally filtering to my left up against parked cars is shaking their head at me like I'm doing something wrong. Yeah. Like, again, calling the kettle black. Like, it's like, dude, you're breaking the law as well. Yeah. It's just like there's sometimes a sense of entitlement.
More of the law.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's been the most embarrassing thing you've done on a motorbike? It doesn't have to be illegal.
Cyril Dupree, which is the Dakar winner on motorcycles and cars, he's won heaps of them. He invited me to an event that he was running in Andorra, and it was a regularity challenge, right? That got blown out the window because I was sitting there going, I am not doing the same speed everywhere to try and win this challenge at some of these roads in Andorra, like some of the most beautiful roads I've ever been on, right? So anyway, I was like, okay, stuff it, I'll come last, I don't care. And I hooned the entire time. And there is a false sense of being okay and safe with that because you're in an international country. I don't know. It's like, not that it changes anything, but mentally you sit there and go, I'm overseas, I'll be right.
It's a bit like when you hire a hire car, you're like, it's not my car.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when you're young and you went overseas and you're like, I'm invincible. It's like, well, no, you're not. But whatever, you can think it because you're naive and stupid. And I was naive and stupid. But I had one of the first ever Triumph Thruxtons that they had released, and it belonged to Spain Triumph, and we got to a racetrack, and it was in the mountains, and it's for snow racing. Yeah. And again, there's a regularity challenge. You meant to sort of pick your lap, and I was just like, nah. And I was literally just wearing denim jeans, and I made sure that my knee was like a centimeter off the ground. I was just flying to the point where everyone was at this track, and then I stopped and I started doing a burnout and started doing circle work, like a burnout in a circle. And then once the tire gripped the previous part of the burnout, the whole thing just dropped. And I nearly busted my knee. And there's this photo of me just sitting on this Triumph Thruxton, brand new Triumph Thruxton, one of the only ones that had been sort of released at that point. And I am literally sitting on the motorcycle, and there's just smoke all around me. And I was just like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Everyone's just looking at me. And I was like, I was so sore, like literally my knee felt like it popped out of place. Ooh. And I left because we had to continue the challenge off the track and just keep on riding. And I literally left, and I was hiding the tears and how much pain I was in until no one could see me. And then I pulled over and was literally crying in pain, trying to get my knee to work again. I was just so embarrassed. Whereas now I just cry publicly. I don't even care anymore.
So best day on the bike then?
Best day, yeah. Well, that was my most fun experience. Best day for me is honestly just being at DGR every year. Yeah. I think for me I don't like being at the front. I know a lot of people love leading rides. To me, it's the most boring place that you can be because you don't get the atmosphere of the noise, and you don't get the interaction. That as well. But I think for me, it's having that proud sort of grandfatherly moment where you're at the back of the pack, just looking at people enjoy themselves. And, seeing everyone smile is. I get one amazing day every year, and that's Distinguished Gentleman's Ride.
Because this is now a full-time gig for you, isn't it? This is now we've spoken about your coffee shops. You're now.
It's been full.
Bread on the table.
Yeah, it's been full time for 9 years. First 4.5-5 years were unpaid. So especially with ethnic parents, they're sitting there going, Mark, you're still living at home and you're 30, but you've got this big event. Can you explain what you're doing? You try and explain to them. They're like, maybe you should just go to university like your brother. And obviously, as it grew, it was so important to get staff on board because I couldn't manage it myself. So it was always them getting paid before me. And, it's controversial for some people who don't like the fact that I get paid doing this. But at the same time, I sit there and say, well, you can come work for us for free. And the response is always, oh, no, but I've got commitments. I've got a family. We all do. Yeah. So it is a full-time paid gig, and we've now been able to get Distinguished Gentleman's Ride into a really good space where 5, it might be 6 of us next year can manage this event globally, and the systems and procedures that we've got in place help us keep those costs down. So we operate a 700 city event at 20 cents in a dollar. So for every dollar that you donate to the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, 80 cents goes towards funding those actual projects, and 20 cents goes to the administration charge for us to actually run it. Yeah. And when you're talking global insurance policy, global risk assessments, and the costs of, the individual costs in running all those events, we're able to operate at 20% because we're sort of subsidized by the fact that we also do some kick-ass sponsorship deals.
Yeah.
So the more that we can grow those sponsorship deals, the less that becomes. So our goal is to try and get down to the 10% mark. But very hard trying to get sponsorship deals in this current climate with COVID because the first thing that started to drop off was dollars. Yeah. And when that happened, but we're in a good position, and we're in a good position for the launch of the next event as well.
I would think the community you've got, though. So I look at that differently. I think the community you've got, I'd be very open for a sponsorship deal because of one, the social piece. It's got a feel good factor to it.
Yep.
Two, the target audience is so specific, and the demographic, like for the right brand, you've got someone that has bought into it, like almost 100%. So that it's a great opportunity, I think, for the right brand to be part of it.
Yeah, and I mean look,
the dollar amount might not be the same. I do take that, but in terms of the opportunity there, I think that's amazing what you've created.
I mean, the word gets thrown around a lot. The acronym gets thrown around a lot. CSR, corporate social responsibility, but it is a thing, and people do want to see companies doing positive things for different communities and for science and for research and all the rest of it. So, it's got the perfect sort of equation for a brand to sponsor it. But at the same time, I mean, it's also not just about the dollars for us. Like we would rather not go ahead with a sponsorship deal if we don't feel that the brand is on point. And we've had, we get approached by brands yearly that want to partner up with us, but when they're not on point, you don't want to sort of affect the authenticity of the event by, for instance, doing something with a chemical company or a pharmaceutical company, right? Because it's like, well, that's not really the right vibe. We've had sponsors that want to sort of partner up with us to do barbecues. I'm like, oh, okay, but it's not really the right feel of the distinguished gentleman's right. And, although it'd be great to be able to take their money, we know that we're not going to be able to deliver what they expect. So we'd much rather just hold off for those right sponsors. And I'm pretty confident with the position that we're in at the moment. And, again, a sponsor doesn't stay on board for 8 years if it's not a positive interaction.
So I was doing a bit of research on you. Scram.
Yes.
I saw your head
You're
on
quite
that
the
website.
stalker, aren't you?
Yeah, I know. You were wearing pink underwear.
Well, I did say pants off, shoes on at the door.
Scram is essentially it's an eyewear company. Yeah. So what was happening was I don't like those wraparound sunglasses that all the guys on their Harleys that are over 50 love wearing. Not a dig at you, but I'm just trying to paint the picture of the sunglasses. For me, it was always about just wearing normal sunglasses, right? I just like the look of, that's my inner hipster talking. And the issue was when you're riding, during the day and night, you get to a point where, the glasses, you can't see through them at night time. And you get caught out a lot on these classic bikes because we break down and we're fixing things on the side of the road, and you'd have to try to find your closest Bunnings to where you were and get some safety glasses, especially if your eyes water when it's out in the open. And the last thing you want to do is ride a motorbike without eye protection. Like we've had mates literally lose their sight because of it. So we decided to make some sunglasses that are your typical sort of fashion sunglasses, but are pretty much indestructible. And that's where Scram came into it. They're a polycarbonate lens. The initial lenses that we still currently do, but the initial lenses were a transitional lens. So during the day, they would be dark, and as you rode into the night, they would be clear. So it works off UV rays for the guys that are wearing those 3/4 helmets or those open face helmets. Doesn't work for the guys wearing their sports bike helmets, their full face helmets, unless they've got their visors open. And that was pretty much it. It was just being able to produce a product that hits, that specific market, and it's never going to be anything, to the scale of Zodica. But at the same time, it serves its purpose. And, we've had people message us saying, hey, man, again, if it wasn't for these glasses, I definitely would have lost my sight. And we've tested these glasses at 130K an hour with a ball bearing, and they still weren't able to break the actual lens. We've run over the glasses, and because they're a double hinged pair of sunglasses, like you can just bend them back into place.
I
like
definitely need these glasses
they're actually really, really special. And when you've got mechanics messaging you going, yeah, these are good. And yeah, they should be wearing safety glasses. But again, people, there's so many mechanics that I know out there that are just using normal sunglasses when they're when they're grinding things. At least this way, it offers that little bit more protection.
You're guilty, man.
Yeah, we had a bit of fun the other day actually because we had a bit of a pop up at a place called Rising Sun Workshop in Newtown, and we had
them on the show.
Oh, awesome!
I used to work with one of the guys, one of the partners.
Oh, sweet. I'm guessing Adrian.
Adrian,
yeah. I mean, I've known Adrian since the start of Sydney Calf races.
Oh,
so we had a pop up there, and we basically got the biggest screwdriver out of their toolbox, the biggest hammer. And we put the lens on the table, and we've gone, if you can break through it in 3 hits, then you can have a pair for free. You wouldn't want a pair if you could, but and they've just smacked it, and literally they've smacked it as hard as they could, and no one could get through the lens. Like they're pretty special, safe and special, and they look good.
I'm going there tomorrow to pick up a pair and have some
Yeah,
lunch.
sweet. I might meet you there for a ramen.
Yeah, sounds good.
So where do you want to take DGR? What does the next few years look like for you? What would be amazing to look like for you?
I think we're at a point with DGR where I don't see growth being a huge thing for us. I think we really have leveled out where I dare say we're probably going to sit on $6 million year on year after we get through this pandemic. Which to me,
I love how you say that so flippantly. That's still quite an achievement.
Yeah, I guess it is. And to be fair, I only thought Distinguished Gentleman's Ride was going to last 10 years. Right, when I first started, I've gone, okay, everything's got a lifespan. I reckon 10 years is where it's at, and we're currently at 10 years. And I'm looking at it, going, actually, there could be another 10 years in this. It's a pretty special event. For me, it's getting more so into the car side of things. I mean, I was always a car enthusiast before I was a motorcycle enthusiast, and the idea to do the Distinguished Gentleman's Drive has been something that's been playing on my mind for the last 7 years. The issue there is we haven't had a strong enough team, and we haven't had the systems down pat to be able to run 2 events at that scale globally. So that's our next goal. I mean, we had the first one locked in for May the 21st last year, and then obviously the pandemic stopped that. And the event this year is locked in for, I think it's the 26th or 27th, whatever the Sunday is of September. So really it's focusing on getting those guys and girls that have got pre-1980s cars, I guess, to come into the world of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, but on 4 wheels. And it's really about being able to pull those communities together and introduce them and be able to launch a global event. And, we're very fortunate that in the last sort of 2 years, we've been able to get to a point where even this year, worst case scenarios, we'll probably have about 150 drives globally.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's another big one for November, obviously. And it's I think it's just it really fits in well with what we do with the ride. And a lot of the riders have got these classic cars, and a lot of the guys that have these classic cars have got these classic motorcycles. So there's going to be a really nice crossover there. The big difference being that it isn't a Cars and Coffee, and that's not to say anything negative about a Cars and Coffee, but it is about, no, we don't need to break stereotypes through the heart of the city. We don't need to reduce the speed limit because we're wearing suits. We're in our cars. So let's go for a drive and let's go cover a couple 100 kilometres and finish up at this fantastic vineyard or a fantastic location outside of Sydney.
Yeah,
I
brilliant.
guess you can't have 800 cars though.
No, so I mean it will be limited, and I think by keeping it super strict to pre-1980s cars, part of that is to limit the numbers. No different to the actual ride itself, and by having it as an actual drive, I mean it will limit it as well. There are a lot of people that are super passionate about classic cars that don't want to drive them, and that's fine. They can still support the event. They can still come to the start or the end, but this really is going to be more of a driver's event.
Awesome. Definitely got to have a conversation off mic.
Yeah. I think the good thing about the drive is when you look at the people that own these classic cars, they tend to be in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they tend to be in a position where a lot of them have gone through life and they've seen the ups and downs of life. It's not the 20-year-olds that just think everything's all gravy, right? So I think they're going to connect really well with the mental health side of stuff, and the fact that they're of that age, they're going to connect really well with the prostate cancer research side of stuff as well. And I mean, we've already had a fair few of the big brands come to us and look at sponsorship, and we've just basically sat there and said, well, guys, this is a next year conversation. I mean, for us, the last thing we want to do is launch a brand new event with sponsors. It's really about keeping it authentic and organic and, seeing where it grows. And with all these events and with every single event that we've ever launched, you build it up and you put so much time and effort into it. And again, you get to a point where you cross your fingers and you go, I hope it works. it hasn't been done before. There was nothing like the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride before it, right? There was no playbook. There was nothing that we could sit there and copy. We had to do it all from scratch. And so, anyone that sits there and says, "Oh, you guys are so smart business-wise," and all the rest of it, we sit there and go, "No, we're just fucking lucky that people enjoy what we do."
Yeah. And I love that as well. And actually, I was going to ask a question. When you started this on year one, you had your global network, your friends, but did you ever see it going global so quickly? Because businesses struggle to go global, and set up foreign offices and hire staff and all that. Whereas, to your point, you'd be very lucky. Was that an initial goal to go global so quickly?
A part of me earlier on, I used to sit there when that question was asked, and I used to sit there and go, "Oh no, I didn't expect it to go that big." I used to say that because I didn't want to come across too egotistical. But from day one of the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride, when I knew that there was 64 cities on board, 64 mates that were running it, I knew it was going to be something huge. Yeah. But for me, it's not us and it's not the team at DJR that make it huge. It's the community. We're hitting a niche within a niche, right? And motorcycling is a niche. And then you're starting to draw in this even smaller niche. But when you draw in a niche that's as passionate as motorcyclists are and as charitable as motorcyclists are, it's really hard to I guess have a failing event. And that's evident with Throttle Roll, that's evident with Sydney Cafe races, evident with the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride. When you can connect with something that they're passionate about, you're bound to have success. And we've just got to make sure that we do the right thing by our community and the community do the right thing by us. And it's a great event. I mean, people sit there and go, "Oh, I don't want to ride motorcycles in a group," and then they do it and they're like, "Oh, actually, that was a lot of fun." Yeah, and it's not for everyone. I had one of my mates. He's a fantastic custom bike builder in the States, an Australian boy. His name's Craig Rodsmith. He's an older guy and, very sort of dinky guy. And he's like, no, I'm not fucking doing it. "Oh, come on, mate, just give it a shot." And he matched his tie to his suit and he did the event. He's like, "That was a lot of fun, but I'm not wearing a suit again. I'm not doing it again." I'm like, "That's cool." It doesn't, you're not going to have success if you try and be something for everyone. Yeah. It's impossible. You've just got to sit there and understand that, hey, some people are going to dig you as a person. Yeah. Some people are going to dig your event. They might not dig both of you guys at the same time. They might not dig any of you. Like, it's just... Really, I think we get caught up in trying to be too popular. Yeah. We're trying to win too many people over, whereas the fact of the matter is you can't be something for everyone. Yeah.
And what a way to finish on. That's bloody brilliant. Well, mate, I'm going to ask my question before we do wrap up. I'm going to flick it up now. I'm going to target the audience here. You've got a sidecar. You like that? Like that? So normally I say you got a table and you've got 3 guests at the table for dinner. Who would you have? I'm going to say you're on your motorbike and you've got a sidecar for 3 other people that you can ride along with.
Big sidecar.
It's a big sidecar. Maybe even just a car. Maybe let's just call it a car. Who would you have? What other 3 people would you ride along with?
And this can be anyone that I don't even know them.
They can be dead or alive.
Oh, wow.
Who would you go for a ride with and why?
Okay.
Only 3 people.
Jay Leno's in there somewhere,
Ooh, nice.
Obviously, because what an amazing collection. And, I'd love to be closer to that guy personally just to be able to check out his cars. Yeah. So sure. Jay Leno's on there. I don't know where he's going to fit, but he's on there. Yeah. It's a big sidecar. Wow, the last person. That is extremely tricky. I don't tend to have idols. I don't tend to idolize people in general. Wow, and for the sake of this not going for an extra 10 minutes, I'm going to have to rip out an answer pretty quickly, right?
we can edit out the silence.
Okay, well, let's just keep this silent for another 10 minutes. Actually, it's Ayrton Senna. Ooh. Yeah, Jay Leno and Ayrton Senna. Yeah, that's my...
Formula One fan?
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's another 10 minutes.
Let me just put in the other tape.
Yeah, no, that's
SD card, actually.
That's definitely my 2.
How much? Well, you got 3. You got 1 more.
Oh, I've got 1 more. Oh, wow. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I could easily say Daniel Ricciardo because I think it would be awesome to hang out with him. And I've got a couple sort of custom paintings of him. One of him winning the Monaco Grand Prix a few years ago.
Where he dives into the pool?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. That was a cool shot, by the way. But I'm not going to say Daniel Ricciardo.
I do think it'd be a cool cat to have.
Me too.
Definitely.
I once...
Daniel Ricciardo, if you want to come out on our podcast, we'd love to have you on.
Yeah, or Mark Webber. I once bumped into Mark Webber, and I've always said to my friends, right, I've always said, I don't care about celebrities.
Yeah.
But if I was ever going to stop one person for a photo, it's Mark Webber.
Yeah.
And here I am, and I was at Nissen, I was jogging up these stairs and I just see this jaw coming towards me. And like, I ain't fucking Jay Leno. I see this jaw jogging. Yeah, I see this jaw jogging towards me, and I've just looked at him. I've gone, Mark. He's like, yeah. I'm like, I have told every single one of my friends that you're the only person I would ever stop for a photo. Can I please have a photo? Did not mention anything about DGR, which was like the perfect opportunity. He rides motorbikes. Like, why didn't I mention like something about the Distinguished Gentleman's Ride and get his mind ticking? Anyways, took the photo and whacked it on socials, and all my mates sat there and gone, "That's pretty funny. That is the one person you said you'd never, you would only stop for a photo." Okay, let's get into it. Another person. I'm blank on that one.
Dudley.
Danny Rick.
Yeah, we'll put Danny in there just because he's there, right?
Well, mate, thank you very much for coming on the show today. If people want to find out a bit more about DGR, how do they get hold of you? Where can they donate, subscribe, be part of the community?
So,
how does that work?
www.gentlemensride.com. We're right in the middle of the campaign at the moment. So, we are trying to raise another $2 million to get to that $30 million number, which I think is just a great message at 10 years to be able to achieve that.
Adriano's got a checkbook. We'll sort that out.
Awesome. I mean, he's got like a Ferrari book as well. So I'm just like, maybe he's got a Ferrari for me. And for the drive, you can pre-register at gentlemensdrive.com. And obviously social media is just Gentlemen's Ride, Gentlemen's Drive.
Awesome. Well, mate, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I think what you've done is nothing short of amazing on a global scale for something you love, and that's pretty fucking awesome.
That's awesome. Thanks so much for having me, guys. Cheers.